Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to CPOC's informational workshops. This afternoon, we have folks that are familiar to us. They have presented on an info workshop in the past. So Rising Scholars has returned to give an update on how implementation is going and also be able to answer questions that any of you may have. And so very excited to have both Kellie and Chelsea back with us this afternoon. A couple housekeeping items before we get started. We are recording this session, so it will be available for viewing at a later date when we post it online with the rest of our information workshops. We will also be sending a copy of the PowerPoint either later this afternoon or early next week with all of you. So just know that you will receive copies of that. And then additionally, if you have questions, please feel free to utilize the chat function. And then we will also have time for questions at the conclusion and possibly throughout the presentation as we go. So depending on how you prefer to ask your questions, you'll be able to drop them in the chat or at designated times be able to raise the hand and be able to ask your question directly. So with that, I'm going to introduce our two speakers who I'm very excited to have with us today. We have Kellie Nadler from the Community Colleges Chancellor's Office, as well as Chelsea Esquibias, who is also with the Rising Scholars Community Colleges Chancellor's Office. Hopefully I've gotten all that right. It's a mouthful. But very excited to have you both with us back to give some updates on how the Rising Scholars program is going, updates on the funding and all things Rising Scholars. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the two of you to get us started.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
We can both just take a minute. I'll have one quick thing and then I'll pass it to Chelsea and we'll hop into the slides. Yeah. So I just wanted to say thank you all. I know it is a Friday afternoon and I have shared with Rosie, I was able to see Rosie and some folks from the different probation departments last Friday. And you all have been such fantastic partners to the college. The things that I hear about how your departments are going out of your way to make college work, how you are problem solving with them, how you are finding creative solutions to staffing has been really, really impressive. And so I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you for that. And also just acknowledge it's a Friday afternoon. So appreciate you. Chelsea, please.
Oh, no, thank you. I echo Kellie. That was something that I was going to get ready to share. So I appreciate you all. And just echoing, we work with the colleges every single day, and you all have been so deeply flexible and thoughtful and going the extra mile. And so I think just sometimes it's really important to just reflect on how far you all have gone. It's in addition to all of the work that you typically do. And so many of you have such a heart for all of the youth that are in there and creating these opportunities. So one, they can achieve their education and then also really change the trajectory of their lives and the generations after them. And so I don't know that we can ever say thank you enough, but thank you, thank you, thank you. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. And I'm going to hand it over to Kellie to do a framework and then start some of the slides. And then I'll take on the second part and we'll do a couple of short activities at the end. So thank you so much.
Chelsea, are you able to share the slides? Oh, you know what? There it goes.
Oh, okay. We should enable it if it's not.
We are good. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah. So today is really about taking time to be in dialogue with you all. If folks are willing to just kind of pop in the chat who you are, what county you're from, and if there's anything in particular you want to make sure that we talk about or go over today, we are going to give a little bit of information. We're going to do some overview about what's going on with the current grant. We're going to talk about the expectations of the grant that are placed on the college. We're going to talk about some of the limitations they may face. We'll talk about partner roles, in the grant rollout, where we are in the timeline, some additional timeline information. We'll talk about our textbook reimbursement program, and then we'll open it up for discussion. We really want to make sure that if you're coming today with requests for support or help, that we are meeting those requests. There are a couple activities that we can do as well. But again, we realize it is a Friday afternoon, and we are so thankful that you are here with us today. So thank you to those who are introducing yourselves in the county. I see we have Stanislaus and Riverside. I see San Mateo, San Joaquin, Santa Barbara, Del Norte, like Fresno and Contra Costa. This is fantastic. Thank you all so much for being here. We're really, really excited to get into it. So we'll talk a little bit about the grant overview. This grant in California is the first time in the entire nation that the legislature has used higher education funding to support juvenile justice impacted youth. And what this means is that you all who are participating in this partnership, you are pioneers in this work, right? You are on the cutting edge of programming, and I believe other states will be following in your footsteps eventually. But there's also a little bit, it's a double-edged sword being a trailblazer, right? You get to be the first ones to do something, you get to do amazing work and transform lives and communities, but there's also no roadmap for you for how to exactly make this work perfectly for your community, your staff, and your team. So we're going to kind of continue to work with you all to create different opportunities for you to learn from one another, for us to identify best practices, highlight those of you whose partnerships are going really well, troubleshoot where the partnerships could use a little bit of support. And then it's really important to remember the definition of who can be served under this grant with the colleges. And so at the community college system, our Rising Scholars Youth Justice Grant is really intended to be for any young person who would be considered juvenile justice impacted. That's any person who's been arrested, detained, or even so much as referred to probation as a youth. So in our system, we might see a 36-year-old come to the college campus and say, I want to start college. And it turns out that that young person was in DJJ back when they were a youth, right? Well, they would be eligible for this program and these services, right? Same with a 46-year-old, a 26-year-old. There could be a 19-year-old who was never detained, but spent some time on probation as a young person and is going to college, and they also would be eligible for these services. And I just think that a lot of the colleges right now are their sort of phase one of initiating the grant is really focusing on getting programming up and running in the detention facilities. But the grand scope of the grant also includes working with, our community and alternative high schools, working with probation departments to identify folks who are on probation, who might be eligible to get referred to the community college. And so I think we'll see the programming inside the detention facilities be the focus for a little while, but then under the grant, which, they all have guaranteed funding for the next 5 years, hopefully with the opportunity to renew, you'll see it expand more and more to include any person who has been arrested, detained, or even referred to probation as a youth. And I also just want to shout out the wonderful Jackie who's in this photo. Jackie, I saw San Mateo was in the house, but Jackie started with dual enrollment with college while detained in San Mateo County. And she is just completing her first year at Stanford Law School. And so we know that we pulled a lot of best practices from what was going on and has been happening in San Mateo County for the last decade in order to create this grant. And we did that because it's not just Jackie who went on to do fantastic things. We have other graduates from UC Berkeley, UCLA, going on to law school, graduate school. And so this is really, these students are really the motivation for why we continue to expand this work throughout the entire state. So under this grant, I talked a little bit about the work that's happening that you all are probably participating in or are about to participate in, which is really about getting those supports in detention up and running, right? There's going to be at least one in-person class required by the college is required to offer each semester. And then students should also have access to online courses, right? Under this grant, we want students to be able to choose pathways that make the most sense for them, because I'm sure many of you are like, I got a few scholars in here, I got a few future welders, I got a few X, Y, and Z. And these programs are meant to provide enough funding to the college and enough staffing at the college so that they are able to support students on individual pathways. The college is also then going to be supporting students as they're transitioning from detention, mostly back to the community, but on the very rare case that a young person would be transitioning to like a CDCR facility, we hope that there is still a warm handoff from your facility to the adult facility, where the community colleges are in all of those facilities within CDCR. Also transitions if they're stepping down, right? If they're moving from an SYTF to a camp or a ranch. In a couple of cases, that camp or a ranch is actually in a different community college's district. Some of them might have grant funds, some might not, but our team is here to help support the program staff at the local campus in ensuring that that young person has a continuity of care wherever they're transitioning, right? So if we are going to the campus, on campus, once that student is back home in the community, they are on that campus, the grantees under this program will have a dedicated space on campus where students can meet. A lot of times there's free food, free printing, sometimes tutors can show up, and it's just a space for gathering. There's meetings, sometimes there's meetings if students are addicts, there's like NA and AA meetings held in these spaces. It's really a mixed bag in terms of what exactly the specific program offers, but there are student supports. Under this grant as well, the college is allowed to provide direct student services, which means that they can offer stipends to students in needs. They can help cover, we have basic needs centers that will help cover their basic needs. They can help provide transportation vouchers, grocery cards. Like, there are a lot of things that are allowable under this grant to help support this young person be successful and also be able to focus on taking their classes, right? So many students in the community college system are balancing families and work and school, sometimes caregiving responsibilities. And so we want to make their lives as streamlined as possible by offering as much support through this program. Now, some of our students are going to go from our campus to employment, right? Our community colleges, especially if you're thinking about a career technical education program, all of those programs that are offered at the community colleges are offered at your specific college because there are jobs in that field that pay well available, right? So you're not going to see, you know, in the really, really hot parts of the desert, you'll see more like air conditioning, cooling, those kinds of programs, because there's a lot of jobs in those spaces. In the Bay Area, there's a lot of like technology focused opportunities because there are a lot of jobs in that place. So we want, under this grant program, if a student wants to go directly from their work with the community college into employment, we want them to have that support. But if the student also wants to go directly from campus to their 4-year institution, the program should support them transitioning in order to complete their bachelor's program. We have phenomenal relationships with the Project Rebound programs and the Underground Scholars programs. And at our CSUs, that's what Project Rebound runs through. They have more than 15 of those campuses have programs specifically for students who have are justice impacted. And at the UCs, that number continues to increase. And then from 4-year, they should get that support into employment, or kind of have it go back around to continued education. So I'll pause there and just see on what has covered, if there's any questions so far. And feel free to just unmute yourself if so, but if not, we'll keep it moving.
Yeah, there isn't any questions yet in the chat. If anyone does have any questions, feel free to either drop them in the chat, or you can use the raise your hand function and unmute. So.
Great. I'll keep it moving for now, and then please just feel free to ask questions throughout. We want to make this as conversational as possible. Okay, so here are some expectations that are placed on the college, and I will say all of this with the understanding that The colleges are still waiting for their grant dollars. Some of them have gone ahead and gotten started. Others are just like slowly rolling and probably will get started much more with much more focus over the summer. And that implementing each of these is going to take a little bit of time, but here over the course of this grant is what is expected, right? Each college should be offering at no cost to you at least one in-person class in detention each semester. That could be where, you know, if you have two different housing units that can't mix and you have a Tuesday, Thursday class and the college is with one housing unit in person on Tuesday, the other is coming in through video, then they're with the other housing unit on Thursday. That's a way to make a hybrid class work. They will also have a full-time program lead who is working in the facility and back in the community and on campus. So I would say a portion of the colleges have either already hired for those roles or are currently hiring. I'm happy to post a link to a Google Drive folder that we keep up to date that has some different job descriptions so you can see if your college has submitted one, or I'd encourage you to reach out to your college and ask them if they've already hired for this role or what the job description was. And maybe many of you are already working with that person. The colleges will also be required to bring a counselor inside who's going to be working directly with the students. So we want the students to have not just that program coordinator or program director who comes on site often to work with them, but we also want them to have robust counseling so that they know, you know, they get an ed plan, right? They get the up-to-date information about what kind of pathways are available to them, guidance on which classes to take, guidance on how to sequence classes in a way that makes the most sense, guidance on what different workforce pathways may look like when they're coming home. They will help in a transition plan. So if the student knows that they're nearing coming home, then there should be like some counseling done to talk about, okay, when you're on campus, we'll start by doing X, Y, or Z, right? The grantees are all also required to have dedicated space on campus for those students who are post-release. And again, this is a place where the students should be able to sit in community with students who have similar experiences to them. We know that many of our adult Rising Scholar students can oftentimes feel a little bit out of place on a college campus. They might say, oh, we have tattoos, or I'm a little older. And whatever it is, it has been so tremendously helpful for people to have a centralized space on campus that they can go to do their homework. They can go when they're feeling overwhelmed. They can go to meet with the program lead. They can go to get some guidance, right? They can go to have a snack if they're hungry, right? They can go to use a printer, whatever it may be. It's really, really important to have that space. Our colleges will also be required under the grant to provide some wraparound support services, both in and out of detention. So I think a lot of times we hear, even from all partners involved in this program, it's so few numbers of students. And that's because they're thinking specifically about the students who are in detention. And a part of our reaction or response is like, we know, right? We know that that is okay. If we can help, you know, the 1,200 or so young people who are engaged in detention, right, get the services and support they need to not come back to detention, to not end up on a pathway to an adult jail or an adult prison. That's what we're here to do, right? And we're starting with those in detention. But like what I said earlier, there are likely, depending on the size of your county, there might be another 40 or there might be another 400 young people on probation who would also be eligible to do some dual enrollment, who would be eligible to come to the campus, right? And we're really thinking about this, not in terms of like we need to be serving X number of students, but in terms of these are students who have really high need and we want to make sure that they get the support that they absolutely deserve. Our colleges are also required to work with partners like you all, right? The county offices of education, the Department of Rehabilitation, and more. We know that the Department of Rehabilitation has been a huge support to our students, especially paying things like tuition costs for some of them. And so we know that partnership is important. A lot of the colleges that I work with have started doing monthly partnership meetings, and I really highly recommend that to all of you. So if you are working with a college, just asking them to set up a monthly partnership meeting between you, the county offices of education, if you have a designated DOR rep that you think would want to participate, the college, right, and any other really key essential players in this work. As this is getting ramped up, I've just seen those monthly meetings be really transformative in terms of what is able to get negotiated, done, and resolved quickly. So again, implementing all of this, it takes time, right? We want to do it right. We don't want to push anyone to work so fast that things are kind of falling to the wayside, but we also want to make sure that you know what the colleges are expected to do. So if ever there's any confusion, you can refer back to this or get connected with Rosie, myself, or Chelsea, and we'll make sure that you have the information you need to advocate for the services. So I'm going to pass it to Chelsea. Thanks.
Kellie, could I
Yeah.
just a couple of questions before we move on to the next section. The one course that you referenced, the one in-person course, how does that one course get selected? Or I guess it's a minimum of one course, so there could be more, but for the in-person.
Yeah, so we wrote in the grant that we wanted like kind of one of the CalGETC or one of the basic general ed courses to be considered for that. Oftentimes we think about classes that are difficult to offer, you know, online or difficult to complete online. It could be math. But as these programs are getting started, you may see something like a counseling course, right? Which is really like an intro to college. You may see something like a dual enrollment course that's chosen because the County Office of Education has said, we would like English to be dual enrolled. And so could you come and teach during the high school day, this college English class, and we'll figure it out. So there is some variation for how that's going to be chosen, especially as the programs are getting started. But if you have any concern about they're choosing this class and it doesn't make sense, then like that's definitely a conversation to have, because there may be some logic or reasoning behind it. In some of our more remote areas, like really rural communities, I am seeing it lean a little bit also on what faculty they have available to make the commute. That's obviously not ideal. We really want the classes to be student-centered in terms of like that college success piece, where they fit in for dual enrollment, but you will see some variation. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, that's helpful. And just two other questions. The full-time lead that's referenced in bullet number 2, like how frequently should that lead be available to come and work with youth or engage with probation and the youth at the facility? Is it on a weekly basis probation should be expecting them to be available and be coming in, or?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. At the Chancellor's office, we didn't put into writing a specific amount of time that the individual would be spending inside the facility, but I can't imagine a program being successful without at least weekly visits from the program lead. For the programs that I know that run particularly successful, I see the program lead in the facility a couple times a week personally. If there's any concern about the lack of frequency or you know, anything like that, I think it's great for us all to have a conversation. So Chelsea and I serve different regions of the state, and Rosie knows who we work with. And so we can really get connected and just have a conversation to see what's going on and what may be able to be tweaked. But I really see it work best when folks are in there regularly.
Yeah. And then last question for, you mentioned that the funding hadn't gone out yet, that it's going to be going out shortly. And then there's a 5-year period that the funding will be ongoing. So does that 5-year period start from the time the initial award is actually received by the community college?
So it's interesting in our system. Apparently this is common for us to say like a grant date starts January 1, but the paperwork doesn't get completed for another 6 months. So some of our colleges understand that and have already gone ahead and started spending down the dollars they've hired. And then other colleges are saying we're not really comfortable proceeding with hiring until the funds arrive. And so the state changed the way that they're doing grant approvals. And now there's one single person whose signature every grant requires. And we're in a queue waiting for that one probably very overworked individual to get to us. And so we are trying to be flexible and figure out what that means, this delay means for the length of the grant. We know for sure everyone is going to be fully funded through December of 2028, but there may be some changes in the future. And this is ongoing money. It's just in our system, the longest period of time we're allowed to provide a grant is for 5 years.
Oh, okay.
So we will still get the money in 2029, 2030, right? Unless anything major changes in the state. But it's just that we don't have the ability to provide like a 10-year grant to anyone. It's 5 years is the max. And so it's not like it's going away after that time. It'll just be the renewal process.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, I don't see any other questions. So just if you do, feel free to use the chat or raise your hand feature, but I think we're good to move on.
Great, Chelsea, I'll pass it to you and let me know when you want me to advance the slides.
Thank you. Great. So I know that we have shared some of this timeline prior, but we know that different people show up to different office hours because you all are extremely impacted and going all over the place all the time. And so just to touch on this, and because you're going to have a copy of the slides too, as you kind of, if you want to reference back, this is the timeline of what the Rising Scholars has looked like when SB 1391 passed in 2013, all the way up to today. So of course, the $15 million that is what is most probably important in this conversation was in 2022. And that's that ongoing funding that they were just talking about for the juvenile justice. I do specifically want to point out though, that in 2023, we had a new chancellor join our state who was previously the president of a college, of Bakersfield College, where they served multiple facilities all over the county and beyond their district lines, some of that being youth, as well as, of course, the prisons, jail, all of that. And so she has released Vision 2030 and where the system is really focused on moving forward, and specifically is calling out rising scholars and dual enrollment. And so that being a part of equity and access. And so I think that's really important for us to just be aware of, that the person who is guiding the ship for the whole state is really leaning in and saying, what is it that we as a community college system can do even better? If we're not thinking about ourselves as iterative, like what are we doing, right? And so how is it that we can take feedback from all of our partners? How can we take feedback from stakeholders? How do we continue to evolve and get better and also have some really common goals? And so the beauty of the Rising Scholars is leaning into those regional spaces and that one-on-one space so that we can make sure we're supporting our colleges one-on-one, but also really the deeper expansion of what does the statewide vision look like and where can she really lean in as the chancellor? What are the barriers that exist? I say all that because if you're sitting there and you're saying, you know what, there is actually an enormous barrier. There is something really big that is impacting us. What we know to be true because we went into the prison starting in 2015, 16 is often there are unintended consequences that come up. Our two systems are trying to support and serve the same person, and we're following different guidelines, different regulations, and it can become so deeply complex. So if you're sitting there and you're like, if the community college system could just do this, it would be better for us. Please, please, please let us know. If you're like, you know, this isn't the moment, please feel free to send us an email so that we can just continue to keep record of that and then escalate those requests and see where it is we can just continue to refine and improve our policies, procedures, all of that. Because if you're sitting there with a barrier, the question is, how do we just remove the barrier for you as a system, if that's something that we can do so that your job is easier and the students are served just at the highest caliber possible. So please always be generous. We welcome that feedback from you. That's the only way that we're going to know how we can improve. So next slide. Great. So when we think about investing in the future, just because, and this is something we've covered before, but I think it's always really helpful to have a landscape of what's going on with the colleges, and it helps you kind of identify and understand why they're making some of the decisions that they're making. So 80 colleges are on, they are receiving 10, well, we don't have to get into the details, but there are 80 colleges funded for adult work. right? And there's $10 million of ongoing funding allocated for the adults. This, of course, is the $15 million for 44 colleges and $3 million that we receive ongoing for textbooks. So one of the questions was around textbooks. There is $3 million that the colleges can request for reimbursement. Similar to what Kellie was sharing before, some of those reimbursement policies can be a little complex. They're working through some of the paperwork. We both work in spaces where there's a lot of paperwork. So if your college is sharing with you, because this came up just a few days ago with one of my colleges, and one of the partners is they're navigating how to get all those reimbursements accomplished and done. They're moving, they're grooving, we're going the right way. But if you hear about places where things are slowing down or it feels a little slow, there has been, as you can see on here, an enormous influx of funding for all of our incarcerated, detained, juvenile justice impacted students, which is great, but also a lot to work through. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. And specifically to Rosie's question earlier, here is the grant timeline so that you have it on hand. In 2023, the colleges, of course, applied to participate. 2024, everything is launching. We know, again, launching looks different everywhere. Would we love to see, everybody love to see a class in every facility with every eligible student? That'd be really wonderful. Also, we know that there are complexities beyond what we even think sometimes. And so, or what people explain to us, because you're truly the ones that are sitting there every day and kind of unpacking how to serve these students. So one, we just want to make sure that you have what you need. And if there are things we can do better, let us know. The grant term will end in 2028. But of course, as Kellie was talking about, the funding is ongoing. So as long as nothing monumental happens, right, we should be in the budget. Everything is fine as we move forward. But that's also beyond us. It just looks fantastic so far. You can go to the next slide. Oh, can you go back one? Can you go back one slide? Thank you. Okay, so I think it's important too, as we go through this, you all are the ones that are sitting with the students, you and the colleges sitting with the students every day. And sometimes what really is helpful is just to kind of lean into where things are going fantastic. So we'd love it. Maybe one or two people. We don't need to spend a ton of time here. We know it's Friday afternoon and you have a lot going on and it's almost the weekend. But it would be really awesome if we could just take a second to reflect on something super successful that's happened with one of your young people or with yourself, what it's looked like for the facility in general, just anything that you've walked away and said like, gosh, this has been so deeply complex, but what a major win, like something really, really awesome and beautiful came out of it. Or a young person shared this with me. So just inviting you, if we can have one or two people unmute and just share an awesome success that has happened at your facility. Oh, go for it. We see a hand up. Give it to us. Yeah.
Hello, I'm trying to get my camera off. I'm sorry. I cannot, but can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I apologize for that. Yes, I'm Janelle Grace. I currently work at Solano County, a juvenile detention facility. We actually have two that are really successful right now. One recently got out in January. He started his college classes here in custody. And then when he was closer to release, we were actually furloughing him to school every day. So he got some on-campus experience before being completely released from the facility. Ultimately, upon release, maintaining a high level of participation at school. And I just got a report today how absolutely wonderful he's doing, and he is slated to graduate and transfer to the UC system. And in comparison, I have one young man who is still in custody and still actually has about 4 years remaining on his sentence. He's a secure youth track facility youth. So meaning he was a juvenile who was tried as or remained in juvenile program, even though he has adult charges. He is currently 21. He graduated high school here. He recently graduated junior college and has his AA in liberal arts. And he was just last week accepted into Sac State. So he will be progressing on to Sacramento State, and we're all very excited and proud of him. He's been working with, you mentioned a few of the programs he's worked with. He's worked with SOAR. He's also worked with Project Rebound. I believe that's how he's getting into Sac State. I forgot the gentleman's name, forgive me. I think it's Aaron Green or something to that effect. I don't know if anybody knows who he is. And he helped him make that transition. So in the fall, he will be a Sac State. What he keeps telling me, stingers up. I guess that means something to Sac State people. But I just wanted to share that because we're extremely proud here in Solano County. And it's the first time ever that we've had someone not attend college. We've been doing that for a while, but to get them to the graduation point. And then this is the first one to transfer to the UC system. First of many. Thank you.
Thank you
I
so much for sharing that.
I
Can we
love that.
just
I
take a
think-
minute? Can we just take a minute real quick to celebrate Janelle, your team? I have been inside that facility before, and you all, this was even before the grant came out. And when I say blown away, like blown away, the commitment that so many folks on your staff have to supporting these students and the way that you work with Mr. Shannon Danley from the college is just was so impressive and phenomenal. And I am not surprised to hear about the fantastic successes that you've had. So thank you so much for sharing, and just want to take a huge moment to shout out you and your whole team.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We appreciate that. It took a lot of people to get us to this point. Shannon has been great in his support. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And you know what I think is so cool is as you share that, other people able to kind of like carry that amazing feedback and all of those big successes into their students too, and into their young people, because I feel like when you work, especially in education, what's so invigorating and exciting is when you can carry in maybe that success hasn't happened right there, but you're carrying it with you and then sharing it over and over. So that's awesome. Is there one more before we open it up for an open dialogue? Maybe there's one more that we can just kind of carry with us through the day and then back to our young people.
I'm sure there is, because
I think so
we hear about
too.
the stories, but maybe everyone's shy on a Friday.
Totally, totally, totally. And I'm sure people have worked really long weeks and have been doing tons of stuff. And so we can go ahead and open it up. If you have questions, comments, thoughts, feedback, we welcome all of it.
This is really your time. If there's anything that you have been wondering about or wanting to know how other counties do or confused about or just wanted to get feedback on, we're here.
Yeah. So, so Chelsea and Kelly, I think just general, if anyone has any questions related to Rising Scholars, implementation, anything that you've presented on or has experienced some kind of challenge or barrier, they kind of want to bring that up for questions, folks can do so now. So
yeah, they're
feel free.
welcome to. And we're popping our emails in the chat right now. So then if you want to email us, you're welcome to as well.
So if anyone has a question, feel free to drop it in the chat, or you can unmute and ask the question as well, either way. Any questions about how implementation is going? Or one of the things I did ask, and so, and I know Kelly had touched on, was just textbooks, because I know that was something that had been raised, and just about assistance with the purchasing of textbooks, and so that opportunity and how to access those dollars. So there is funding available for that. So that should not be something that probation should be asked to cover for, because there is a funding stream for that. So.
And that is it's a newer change. So if you're like, we've been paying for books for years, just know it is a new change. But now we want you to be able to spend your dollars on things that make more sense. And we don't want our colleges sort of spending down all of their grant money on textbook costs. So we will be reimbursing them for those.
important details. So thank you for clarifying that, because definitely don't want it to seem as if folks have been holding out on others. So did not want to give that impression. Any other questions or
Hey,
comments?
Rosie.
Yeah, go for it.
This is Michael Palmer. I'm from Monterey County Probation Juvenile Hall. We've been working really hard with Hartnell Community College, which is our local community college, and it seems to be going well so far. We've got a couple of classes signed up for the next semester. We have been doing a lot of in-person stuff. I do have one question, because I know that there is some turnover at schools a lot, and we have a very good working relationship with our current team. If at any time there is an issue with the school and maybe we don't feel like we're getting what Rising Scholars is asking our school to give us, is there a way of contacting someone, or who do we contact in that case?
Yeah, I am the person who oversees Hartnell. My email is in the chat. Please feel free to reach out. I think oftentimes, especially if there's transition in staffing, things can just fall through the cracks, but I have stepped in many a time to support probation departments and their colleges and kind of finding their way back to what the students need. So you should have my email. You can reach out anytime and I'd be happy to support. And it's fantastic that you all got the wonderful Brenda Jones on this now. She has been supporting students inside CDCR for years, and I know she just transitioned to working with you all.
Yeah, she just did a virtual tour of Stanford for our youth today, actually, with some of the justice impacted students to go there. So it went really well. I like I said, we have no complaints on this end, but just in case, I mean, we want to make sure we're being supported.
It makes total sense. And I think we can even think of it not just as like ratting out on a college, right? It's mostly like just reaching out to bring in additional support to make sure that students are getting what they need. And she invited me to join that tour of Stanford with the students, but I said I have to be here instead. So I do see a question. Yeah, thank you, Michael. I see a question from Kara. This is, how would a county get started? Is it too late to be an implementing county, or apply for the grant? So we do not currently have additional grant opportunities open. I'm curious, are you comfortable unmuting and letting us know what county you're from?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm with Riverside County. So I just was wondering, the timeline had passed to apply for the grant.
You have a couple colleges who got the grant in Riverside County. And so you, depending on just who you're closest to, Riverside, are you near Riverside Community College?
Yes.
Let me just pull up for you our directory programs, and you should be able to reach out to, I'll pull it up right now. Dr. Adrienne Grayson. I'm going to pop her contact information into the chat for you, but she's overseeing the partnership with probation. So definitely shoot her an email.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah. And then I see another question that we currently have a youth enrolled at a college in Yolo County. How do we access the Rising Scholars Program to assist with paying for the youth classes? Now, Kelsey, you might correct me, but I think that might be one of the counties we don't yet serve through the grant program. There are a small handful.
They can go ahead and email. Do you want to send me an email and we can talk about, because I had to pull it up because I don't know all the counties ever, I apologize, but it looks like it's in Sacramento. Yolo County is Sacramento. And so if you want to connect with me, the colleges have been talking about wanting to explore options. So, or if you want to pop your email in the chat, maybe we can meet one-on-one.
Maybe email us both. I think part of it is we work with colleges who are in both. So just shoot us both an email, because I think actually
That's fine.
depending on where you are, I think I have a college in Yolo that wasn't able to participate but was trying to get in the grant program.
Oh,
Yeah.
sounds good. Okay.
Thank
sounds good.
you. Were there
And
other
I
questions?
just want to vouch for both Kellie and Chelsea. They are great partners, and anytime that I reach out, just because something that I've had outreach from a probation department, they've always been very responsive and helpful in trying to help both kind of just bridge the gap or work through any issues that may be getting experienced, whether it's a challenge on either side. And so they are very good partners. So definitely they are very, very helpful. So I would encourage folks. And if at any time anyone loses their email from what they put in the chat, I'm very happy to help make those connections. So I had one other question. The wraparound services that were mentioned, I was curious, would that include tutoring assistance? And how would does that get scheduled, or how does that work? Or would that work?
Most definitely. So a lot of the programs that are particularly successful are sending tutors into the facilities themselves. Some who have a project rebound or like a four-year university who has a project rebound or an underground scholars nearby are sometimes leveraging those students to come in as tutors. But I think if you have a student who is struggling with a particular subject, it's not uncommon for math to be a struggle, not just for students in detention, but for all of our community college students, right? It's really best to be communicative with the college and to request some additional supports, because we want these students to get the extra supports that they need to be successful. And sometimes it's just a difference of having a couple extra hours a week of someone sitting one-on-one with a student going over something that they never had the privilege of being taught before.
And would that be covered via the grant?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
It's written into the budget bill language. Tutoring services are something that they are able to use the funds on.
That's great. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions that anyone might have? And certainly, once the funding is released, we'll be happy to send that information out to everyone. And then I know, Kellie, you referenced the regional contacts. I think that that's something online, and we can send it out when we send out the PowerPoint. And I think I still have the link to the Google Drive that you referenced, so we can send out some supplemental materials with the PowerPoint, so that everyone has that information as well. So
that's fantastic. Again, I'll pop the Google Drive link into here too, so people will get it multiple ways. But Rosie, I just want to take a minute to thank you for just how fabulous of a partner you've been, and how connected you are with all of your folks and devoted to these students and these young people, and really, really appreciate you.
likewise, and it takes all of us, right? So everyone who's spent the time this afternoon and each and every day. So and Chelsea and Kellie, to the both of you too, and just everyone on the probation side, and certainly Amy for helping make all the informational workshops happen. So I appreciate everyone. And so if anyone does have any questions later as you're thinking about things, or if you run into something 3 weeks from now and you're like, oh, they said something on that Rising Scholars informational workshop, please do feel free to reach out, and we can work through issues as they arise. But I do really thank you both for being with us this afternoon. I know some of the information we have covered in the past, but really wanted to kind of take a moment to revisit and regroup in case there were things that had come up since our last presentation, and kind of just to give an update on how things are going. So we'll continue to do this periodically, and wish everyone a wonderful weekend. Take care.